Welcome to Not Going Quietly, the podcast where we inspire growth, beat down biases, and get into all sorts of good trouble, with co-hosts Jonathan Beale and Britt East.
No topic is off limits as we explore ways to help everyone leap into life with a greater sense of clarity, passion, purpose, and joy.
So get ready to join us for some courageous conversation, because Not Going Quietly starts right now.
Hey everyone, welcome to Not Going Quietly, the podcast for outraged optimists and heartbroken healers all over the world, where we surface life's searing truths in the name of radical togetherness. I'm your host, Britt East, and I have a fantabulous featured guest today. I cannot wait for you to meet him, so let's dive right in. Chris Sabol is a music educator and the co-founder and current artistic director of Pivotal Productions, a nonprofit theater company that strives to give young adults theatrical industry experience. I got so excited, I got tongue-tied. I can't wait to learn more about that. He is the co-writer of a new musical called Straightforward, which premiered off-Broadway in New York City at Theater Row last summer. He has musically directed over 60 shows, including Chicago, In the Heights, The Last 5 Years, Spring Awakening, Company, Next to Normal, Rent. Chris, those are like all of my favorite shows. I can't wait to get into that with you. Chris obtained a Bachelor of Science degree in Arts Administration from Wagner College and a Master's of Music Education from Boston University. He is also currently a doctoral candidate at American University. His debut album is also streaming on Spotify. We're going to give you lots of links, so look forward to that. And he is now married to his loving partner, John, after being together for over 8 years. Absolutely incredible. Chris Sabol, welcome to the show. How the hell are you today?
I'm doing well, and how are you? Thank you for having me.
I'm doing great. I'm just so excited to talk with you. It's been a few weeks since I've seen you, and I'm really excited to delve into it. But I have to start off with this marriage. I mean, congratulations. You just got married. So tell me, how was the big day? How's married life treating you so far? What's it like?
It was perfect. I mean, leading up to it, it's sort of like doing a show, really. It's like, you're like the week before, you're like pulling your hair out and you're like, oh my God, there's so much to do. Like, why did we do this? And then, like the day comes and it's just like everything that you want and more, it's just like the absolute perfect day. I had like one like freak out diva moment in the car with John. Like, I think it was the day before, just like there were just a couple moving pieces that just like weren't coming together, and I was just like, what, and then other than that, I was done. After that, I was done. So but he's very patient with me, which is very good, very nice of him. This is actually his computer because mine was not working. Okay. And then and it's his work computer, and I think I like X'd out some of his stuff. So I'm sorry, John. I'm so sorry. Yes. But yeah, it was it was the perfect day. So and I don't know, it's sort of the same, the life afterwards. I mean, you could probably talk about that too. I mean, it's a nicer, you feel like it's a new chapter, but it's still the same old stuff, like in a good way though.
Are people treating you any differently now that you're married? You getting nagged less by your parents or your friends?
Well, now it's just like, I think now that we're married, it's like we were just talking about like, oh, what do we do? What are we going to do for the holidays? Like, who's taking what holiday, which family is going where, and all that stuff. So that season has currently begun. Yes. So, but other than that, it's good. I mean, we're both so busy all the time. So it's just, it's hard. That's the hardest part, I think, it's just, he works a lot and I work a lot. So
yeah. Reading your bio is like, oh my gosh, thank you for making time for us. I don't know how you do it. I'm not as productive as you. So that's
what?
Absolutely.
Oh,
amazing.
That's not true. Like, you wrote a book. What are you talking about?
That was a long time ago. Well, sorry. I was just thinking about marriage in general when you were talking. I was like reflecting on my own life, and I've been married with my husband for 15 years and married for a big chunk of that time. Depending on how you define it and the legal stuff. And one of the things about being part of our community is it's like we ditch the rules and templates and life scripts and all that kind of stuff that straight society imposes upon themselves. And it's like we get to pick and choose what we want. And so my question is, why'd you get married?
I think that I think we get that. That's a good question. I think it's about sort of like cementing that belief that you feel that you're going to be with this person, for the rest of your life, and so that's that is like how you cement that, right? It's like we are officially joining all of our lives, things, everything together, like as one, um and I also think too, being gay, I think that there's this newfound, I don't want to say rebellion because that's like not why we did it. But I think it's more important than ever to sort of show that like there are gay relationships and those are healthy and quote unquote normal relationships. And so especially like in this climate that we're in now, not to get like, so political so fast, but there's there's this climate, this buzz, this anti LGBTQ stuff that's rearing its ugly head again across the country. And I just feel like you have to you have to show up. You have to show up and show out. And I think it sucks that that's sort of a reason to even bring it up to do it. But and that's not why we did it. But I think, being an educator, like a high school educator, right? I think it's very important for like young queer people, questioning people to see healthy gay relationships, right? Like they were so excited that we were getting married and like they wanted to know all about it, they wanted to see pictures. And like, I remember being in high school and sort of questioning who I was and my identity as a gay man. And I think if I had a teacher that was openly gay, I think that would have helped me. I didn't have one. I don't know if you did.
No, I am a lot older than you, and so that was not a thing where and when I grew up. But yeah, I was also thinking about marriage. I'm sorry, the wedding itself. That when I was growing up, and same for my husband, we didn't really have this emotional attachment to the concept of a wedding. It was not. It was literally beyond our wildest dreams.
Mm-hmm.
Having a wedding, being married. I mean, surviving. Yeah. I mean, first of all, surviving, because it was at the height of the AIDS epidemic when, he and I were growing up and stuff. So just that we would live past 20 was like, amazing. And then the fact that you could get married and have the legal rights and protection, or have a civil union, have a partnership, but then a wedding on top of it, like who would come? What is it? What do you do? What happens at a gay wedding? So I'm curious, like, why? Okay, so you chose to get married for all those wonderful reasons. Why did you choose to have a wedding, and kind of just a big picture? What was it like?
We couldn't we when we picked our venue, the venue is like we can hold 160, and we were like, okay, so we'll invite 160, and then like 130, 120, 110, maybe we'll show up. I think and the final number ended up being 152. So like eight people said no. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, and then I Googled, because when we first Googled it, it was like 20% of people that you invite to your wedding are going to say no.
Yeah.
But I regretted to see that at the bottom of that same article that said this does not apply to gay weddings. That the
100% response rate.
Yeah, apparently people think that going to a gay wedding is statistically more fun. So we didn't know that. But I mean, all jokes aside, I think it's like, you want all of your closest family and friends there to sort of, it's like the one time in your entire life that you're going to have like every single person that is important to you in like there, you know what I mean? Like all in the same room, like celebrating you, and so, that was sort of as someone who is used to like being up in front of people and I was like sort of nervous for that. I was like, oh my God, all these eyes are going to be on us all day. But yeah, I think it was just it was crazy to me, and it was like humbling too to see that many people like wanted to come.
Well, the cool byproduct, like you alluded to, is the fact that this event, and then of course your shared life together over the years, will have ripple effects beyond what you can even imagine into the larger the community, beyond what you could even imagine, because they will all go back and share photos and talk about their experience. Their attitudes might change, their awareness and understanding of the attendees, might change, and so it's going to have such positive, beautiful consequences. Both the marriage and the wedding, and I just think it's really cool.
Yeah, thank you. And I think too, like, there's this sense of like, even when like writing the show, which we'll get into, I'm sure, later, but there's this sense of like the generations of people that came before you, in this community, and like that's not lost on us. It's not lost, like the what generations that are older than us that had to endure in the 80s and the 90s, and the rights that the people that came before us fought for, and like the collective trauma that the community was facing during that time period, and like that's definitely not lost on the newer generations, at least not for me.
And in some cases still experiencing that, there's an epidemic of loneliness, especially among elderly gay men. Even if they have not been cast out of their families or anything traumatic like that, they just, in some cases, never developed the requisite life skills, never had the reciprocal nurturing relationships. That was all stolen from them, purposely stolen from them, and not to mention the AIDS epidemic and all of that. So it's it's a beautiful sentiment, kind of like honoring the entire community through your shared love. Well, why don't you tell us about the musical Straightforward? What's it about? How did you get the idea? What was your role, your creative inspiration? What was your role in the creation of it? What's the latest? Give us the update.
Oh my God, there's so much. So the story is about a shared friend of ours, Mike Iamelli, and his now husband, Garrett. And about 10 about 10 years ago, Mike wrote an article that went viral about his sexuality, and about how he and Garrett, that both are identified as otherwise straight men, fell in love with each other over the course of Mike's illness, and Garrett taking care of him through that illness. And Billy, my co-writer, we had both read this article, but we didn't really share it with one another. But it was just something that everybody was reading at the time that it came out, because it had gone really, really viral. I think it was mostly on Facebook. That was like the thing at the time. And we had just gone to see Fun Home, which is one of my favorite musicals. And we were like at a bar afterwards, just me and Billy, and we were looking for something to write about. And, Billy said, well, did you read this article? And I was like, yeah, I did. And he was like, well, I think it would actually make like a really great musical. And I was like, yeah, it would, but unfortunately it is about two real people that are living in this world. So you can't just do that, so I would say Billy is definitely the more like who gives a fuck person in terms of like the two of us, and I'm more of the one that's like, well, stop, like, how are we gonna do this, right? So Billy, we made an agreement that night. He said, I'm going to reach out to Mike, and I'm going to tell him that we want to write a musical about his life. And if he responds and says it's okay, then you have to do it with me. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll make that bet, because he's not going to respond. He's going to think that we're crazy. And of course, knowing Mike now, like, he responded, and so And actually later Mike told us that we were the only people that he responded to. He had like
Whoa.
all of these people that were reaching out from all these different news outlets, from like NPR to ABC, like all these other different things. But he just felt like his story was being so misconstrued by like a lot of the media outlets out there. So he just decided to not talk about it. So he was like, well, if these guys are going to come up and interview us over a period of 2 days, like maybe we have a shot at getting what really happened out there. And then I think there was also this idea of like, these guys are like post grad, like very young. They don't, it's just like a little project. Like we'll humor them, like sort of energy as well.
Non-threatening.
So, we go up there. We went up to Boston because Mike was like, yeah, sure. Like, why don't you come up and chat? And I was like, I can't believe this guy actually said that this was fine. And so we went up there and we just like rolled the tape for like, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours. Wow. And Mike sort of outlined everything. And we talked to Garrett too, but Mike definitely is the one that will he'll talk to you forever if you want, which I love about him, yeah. Because if he didn't, then we wouldn't have this musical. So that literally from the tapes of what Mike and Garrett said on those recordings is how we got the musical.
Oh
so
that is so cool. I have to interrupt really quickly though, because this is like not an everyday occurrence. Okay, like, so first of all, think about it from Mike and Garrett's perspective. Like, somebody wants to do what with our what? Yeah, is this real? How can this be? Who are these guys? Like, what is the? So it's like, you want to write a musical about my little life or this one event, and so it's so crazy. And then the idea of like, you like in your collaborator like cold calling them essentially and like introducing yourselves.
I was 24 years old
oh my gosh.
And had no idea what I was going to do with my life. And Mike and Garrett are a little bit older than us, but not by much. But it was just like looking back on that's just like sort of crazy that we did that,
And was it like when you met them? Okay, so it's like, first of all, it's like, okay, we had this email exchange or however you communicated, and then you're like actually go from New York City to Boston. Not the longest trip in the world, but still kind of a leap of faith. Like, who are we going to meet? All you've done is read an article about. You don't know who they are really, so it's like, who are you going to meet when you get there?
No, I know. Well, we didn't. We stayed with one of our friends that we went to college with because she like lived up in that Boston area. So we would like stay with her, and then we would go to Mike and Garrett's and talk to them, and then we would leave. And just like it, it's such a surreal thing to have to like go into these people's houses and into their home and be like, tell us everything about your life, and we don't know who you are. But only Mike and Garrett are that gracious,
Yeah. And then opening up their lives to strangers so they can make a theatrical production of it that millions and billions and zillions of people might one day see. It's like a huge leap of faith and really cool. So I'm interested in kind of the creative process and like, what is your role? What was your collaborator's role in terms of collecting the information, but then also turning that into a piece of musical theater? I don't think a lot of our audience understands the long winding journey between an idea and then seeing something on the stage.
Well, it is a journey that I would not recommend for anyone take. No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, from the start, this is like, we're going on like year 10 and like this is not maybe year 9, but like it's not anywhere near done, And so I think one of the things that people often don't see is like, if you go and you see Wicked, you go see any of these shows, right? Strange Loop is a perfect example. Strange Loop won the Tony 2 years ago for Best Musical. I'm pretty sure I read an interview with the writer of that, Michael R. Jackson, who I think is like absolutely brilliant. he took about 20 years to write that. So it was about 20 years from when he started writing it to then putting it up on a Broadway stage. So, we've done workshops, right? But like the first process was to write it. And like, it was so just even entertaining how to start that, like, was crazy. Because they told us about their lives and there's all these different characters and all these different players that are involved. And we were like, how big is this cast going to be? Like, is it going to be right? But then Billy had the idea of being like, what if we just did like a 2-person thing and it just was them? Yeah. And then the other characters will like be there, but that we'll see glimpses of them through the two of them. And I think that was like the best decision we made when it came to this musical, because I don't think it would work with any other people as much as some of the criticism that we've got is that they would like to see the third character of who plays I guess the character Garrett's girlfriend come into the show, but like we're just not, I don't know, we still go back and forth on that. But we wrote, I would say, a handful of songs like after we got back from Boston, and that was probably like 2015. We lost touch with Mike and Garrett for about, I want to say 2, 3, 4 years, because again, me and Billy, we're in our mid-20s. We're trying to figure out what it is that we're going to do with our lives. Billy went off to England for a while to do a master's, and I was getting my education degree, my master's. And so like we kind of like shelved it for a bit. Then COVID happened, and we had found ourselves with a lot more time on our hands, and so we decided and we made it a goal to finish it. And so we finished it during the pandemic. We would have like virtual meetings and stuff, and then but my role was mostly music and lyrics, and Billy's role is mostly book, and sometimes Billy will take my lyrics and zhuzh them and make them make sense within the story. And like I would the book is the book is the script, so like the written spoken dialogue. And like I would contribute to that, and Billy would contribute to music and lyrics as well, but I would say primarily what
does the book mean? I don't think a lot of our
and like we reached back out to Mike and said, hey, do you remember us? Literally, do you remember us? And I was like, I'm and Billy was the one that sort of dealt with Mike throughout this whole process. I didn't want to speak to Mike or Garrett during the writing process. And I told Mike this.
Hey, so remember us?
But it's not like when he listens to this, he'll be like, what? Oh my God. Yeah, I did not want to speak to them because I felt that their story was so universal to what I experienced growing up as a with my own sexuality. And so
breaking news,
I wanted to make sure that some of my DNA was in the score. And so I felt the more that I talked to Mike and the more that I talked to Garrett, there would be more of them and not enough of me. And or anyone else for that matter, or Billy, right? So like I think for any piece of theater to be relatable to an audience is that the audience somewhat needs to see some of themselves what they're seeing on stage. And so I made that a point because, and now actually it's harder to write when we do rewrites. It's harder because now we're very close, we're very good friends. So now when I'm writing, it's like, it's a very weird thing that like this weird, I don't know what I would call it. Like, it's like a tornado that like just keeps spinning and like all these different factors are involved. And like, I'm like writing things and I'm like, well, Mike wouldn't say that, but I guess like this Mike would, so it's become like this thing that's bigger than them or me or anyone, you know what I mean? It's very strange. Yeah, exactly. And they've been so good at accepting
Yes.
that, because like, no.
Because a lot of people wouldn't. A lot of people would be like, this didn't happen. That's not my life. And now people are going to think, they're going to judge me and think something about me based on some crap that you wrote in a stupid
Right.
musical. And now I'm getting flack. And so that's cool that they were.
Right. Which is why, in any chance that I get with any podcast, I love doing podcasts, by the way, because I think they're just such a
Yeah.
great way to like chat about stuff.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like, any chance I get, I will be like, that song is about me. So then that way it takes
Mm,
the pressure off of, like, a lot of the Garrett
yeah.
songs that happen in this musical are really about me. And so,
Oh, wow.
yeah, so like a lot of these turning point things that happen, like I don't want to give too much away, but like there's a big thing that
Yeah.
happens like towards the end, where it kind of gives the audience a little bit of a shock, and it's like, I did that in my life. I did that. He didn't Garrett, the real Garrett, didn't do that.
Right.
So like, I
Right.
kind of
Right.
feel bad because like when we went to the opening night, like Mike and Garrett's
Oh,
like
no.
family friends are there, and they're like, well, that didn't happen.
And their
Yeah,
parents.
you're right. Yeah. So I was like, I felt bad, but they were like, no, don't worry about it. And like, but I just think that everyone needs to know that. Like, there's a
Yeah.
little bit of DNA from me and Billy and Mike and Garrett and hopefully other people out there that will see it and say, yeah, this happened to me too. And they've been so gracious at accepting that. Because like you said, not some people, if you're writing something based off of somebody and they're like, no, I don't give you the right to say that,
Right.
or to say that happened, because it didn't, and so we're
Right.
very, very lucky to be working with them.
What a tightrope to, I've heard actors, I've never been in this side of the creative arts and anything, but I've heard actors talk about, inhabiting a role based on an actual person is challenging. And I'd never thought of it before meeting you and hearing about this musical, what it would be like from that standpoint. I just had never considered. I'm sure I've seen biographical stuff, even probably with people still living, but it just had never occurred to me the creative process and the tightrope that you're walking. And there's so much public pressure on trying to extract gossip and get kind of titillating facts glean them through innuendo or references or inferences or implications in a song or a piece of dialogue. And it's like, now what's really cool, you were really smart about, is you muddied the water so thoroughly. It's now this big stew.
Yeah.
And it's like just sit back and enjoy the event and be moved by the production, because it's not Chris Sabol, it's not Mike or Garrett, it's something entirely different. There's been some alchemy that has happened and merged all these different identities into this kind of alternate universe, so that you can let go as an audience member at being, scandalized or titillated
Yeah.
by some piece of gossip.
And we've had now six actors who have played these roles collectively. So
wow. Oh my
like
gosh.
in my mind, right, those people are part of this stew that you say, right? Because it's like they're all part of it, and like they all play it differently. They sing things differently, and so they're like, they embody those characters that are based off of real people. And it's sort of like to see, like even like the opening night party, right, to see like Mike and Garrett interacting with Mike and Garrett, you know what I mean?
So
like it's and we had like a Zoom meeting with the two actors that played beforehand, but like that was the first time that they met in person, was like at the opening night thing. And like I think that we've all sort of just become this stew, as you say. That's a good word for it.
Yeah. And what I didn't realize before you and I were chatting a few weeks ago was how extensive some of the rewrites have been. And again, I don't want you to give anything away or do spoilers, but just generally speaking, pivotal plot points, or character direction, shaping the way audiences likely feel about one character or another, and how that impacts the arc of the story and the emotional journey the audience goes on, and judging based on their reactions. Can you kind of talk about that creative process?
Yeah, I mean, looking at what the show was in the 2021 workshop reading that we did at Wagner College, to then doing the 2022 festival performance that we did with the New York Theater Festival, to then the 2023 off Broadway at Theater Row production, like so many changes have been made. Like I remember from the start, like the character of Mike was going to be like the narrator of the story. So like he would come out and be like, "Hi," not in this, but it was like, "Hi, I'm Mike. Like, here's my story," like kind of a thing. Yeah. And so he had that sort of thread throughout the whole thing. And then we decided, like, I don't know if that we like that, because I don't want Mike to have to be this like reliable narrator throughout the whole thing, because, and then one of the rewrites that we're making, I think, in this new version after seeing 2023 is that I felt, and I think so, to some extent Billy felt it too, is that the character of Mike was very like, "Come on, let's go," to Garrett, and Garrett was like, "I don't know." And like, I feel like there needs to be more of a tension between these two characters from the get-go, because that's reality. And sometimes, right, and sometimes as you rewrite and you rewrite, you like lose the sense of like where things should go, and sometimes you don't see it until you actually see it on stage. And I think it sucks to say that, right? Because like you sort of have to put yourself out there. You have to put what you've written out there to hundreds of people. Because we did 9 performances of this. There was a 100-seat theater, and we were sold out for, I would say, 8 of them, right? So you had like collectively almost 1,000 people see this, and so that's scary. It's scary to put something that you've worked so hard on to out there into the world for people to critique and to say whether they loved it or hated it. And so, but you have to do that, because you can't make it better unless you see, because to me, like, theater is this living and breathing thing, and the audience is just as important as what's happening on stage. So if you don't have the reactions of the audience, you don't know if a joke is going to land. You don't know if a song is going to land. You don't know if people are going to be crying when you want them to be. So you have to like literally look at the audience, right? And Billy, I don't know if he did this on purpose, but like my piano, like I was on stage like with the band, and I literally was looking straight out into the audience, which was the most terrifying process. Billy he was the director, so he was like, he like fucked off in the back and was just like, sometimes I would see him like, he's going to listen to this later, but like I would see him go from the back of the theater into the dressing room. He would leave the theater, and I'd be like, you know what? And so, because it's a lot, it's really a lot to take in, because all of these people are collectively watching this thing that you did, right? And it's very overwhelming to experience how other people are going to experience. So me sitting there at my keyboard, I can see the audience. I can see if you're enjoying it. I can see if you're hating it. Like it was a lot, So my one request,
I think people don't understand how much performers can see from the stage. So I don't think you know this about me, but I used to be a professional musician, a classical flutist, and playing from, I played all over the world in competitions and blah, blah, blah. So, but playing from memory, performing from memory, where you are looking at the audience, is a whole different world. So I'm having a PTS kind of like reaction now, this emotion to you, like describing this, because people don't think in most venues, you see a lot more than the audience realizes. When somebody's bored, when they're texting or picking their nose or gossiping or sleeping, and you recognize faces. You can see a lot.
You could see people getting up to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
It's like, and so it's a lot. But you have to. What I've learned,
Yeah.
especially like in the theater world, is like you have to do that because you're never going to make it better unless you put it in front of an audience and say, this worked, that didn't work. And like, we're trying to take all of the positive stuff that we got from the show and then all of the negative stuff that we got from the show and make that work for the next rewrite, and say,
Yeah, so it aired. I mean, sorry, you had this latest production in 2023, and then so now you're kind of going back into the woodshed as collaborators and preparing for the next iteration.
yes. So we're trying to just like get our ducks in the row of like, forming a creative team to bring it back to life. And we're hoping to do like a commercial open-ended run off Broadway. That's the goal. So the first step is to rewrite it and then go back into workshopping phases with the new rewrites with Michael and Thomas, our two actors, to just like see if those rewrites work, because that's another thing is you could write something down on a piece of paper, you could write a song and it might sound good to you at the time, but then when you get into the space and you hear someone else sing it, you're like, oh shit, no, we have to change that. So,
or even once you insert it into the show, it no longer fits in the arc of the emotional journey. So
right,
it may be a great standalone song, but yeah.
And that we're actually going through that now. There's a song that one of our actor Grayson, who played it in the 2022 New York theater version, and then he was our swing for the 2023. So he was the understudy for both Mike and Garrett. He just did a cabaret on Sunday, and I played it for him, and he sang a few songs from the show. And one of the songs that we have in there is called "Change for You," and we decide. And I love that song. Like I think it's one of the best songs I've ever written. But we have to cut it in the next iteration, and it's his favorite too.
Heartbreaking.
And I was like, it doesn't fit anymore, like in the place that it goes. And so there's another song that was written later on called "Straight Lines" that I think I played that one up at the retreat for you guys. And that one sort of says the same thing as "Change for You," but I think it says it in a better way. So we're cutting "Change for You" and putting "Straight Lines" where it was. So it's like, it's a very like grueling process, because it's like you don't want to cut these things, but there's only so much that an audience is willing to sit through, for a new musical.
Not only grueling, it's gut wrenching. I mean, it's like you fall in love with like your children, you fall in love with this music. You don't want to see it extracted from the show. And then where do you take it? Are you, because you have a collaborator. So it's like, are you able to keep that as your own song? Can you rework it? Can you pilfer it from other projects? It's like, it's really complicated. And I think lay people don't realize it. They don't see the inner workings, and they don't realize, how meticulous this stuff is thought out over this course of years or even decades.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I wish I could say that it was easy to write this musical. It was not. Because in order for me to get the emotional arc of the character, specifically Garrett, I needed to go back to a place in my life that I don't really care to ever go back to. And so, but in order to invoke those emotions and those feelings for a character, I think the only like authentic way to do that is to pull from your own experience. So like, like I had to go back to those early college years where, I wasn't so sure of myself and what I wanted. It's painful. And so to write songs like that and kind of go through that painful process of doing that and then saying this song doesn't work anymore, is heartbreaking. And like a lot of times too, with Billy, the way that we work is like, usually we start a scene with a song, right? So like I'll send him a song and then he'll say, okay, I really, really love this. So like, let's expand on the lyrics more. Where does this go in the show? Like, where's the, so that's how we sort of work. It's like a puzzle. And so sometimes like I would just send him songs that I would write and they weren't from a place of like heartache or where I would just send him a bit. I think this would be good for this. And him being brutally honest would be like, listen, you need to do what you do best. Have a few glasses of whiskey, go sit at that piano and get me that gut wrenching, stuff that I got from songs like Blinding, and it's like, oh, okay.
Oh my god. Collaborating is so hard.
It's very
Can
hard.
you talk some about the process? Even when it goes well, it's just because you're passionate, smart people, you have opinions, and if it's working well, you feel free to express those opinions and to be really honest with one another. Can you kind of pull back the curtain a little bit on what your process is like?
Yes. Billy and I have known each other since college. We met in college. We were both in the same fraternity. And so we were both like arts administration majors, so like arts management, types. And so, we've had a very long creative partnership because even at college, we decided that there wasn't a lot of other theater opportunities on campus for students who weren't making it onto the main stage at Wagner. And Wagner's like an amazing place to go for theater. It's like one of the top ones in the country. But we also felt like, okay, well, if you didn't make the main stage show, like what else are you going to do? So we started this student run, it was called Student Run Musical Theater, and it was a group on campus. And, he would direct the shows and I would musically direct the shows. And we did a bunch of shows together. Like we did Spring Awakening, we did Company, as college students. We did what else did we do? Next to Normal. We were actually the first production of Next to Normal in the country after it left Broadway. Like New York One
so cool.
came to like cover us. It was like very surreal.
Whoa.
So like once that happened, I think that might have been the starting point of us being like, wow, like when we work together, like we do some really great things. So when we left college, we decided that we were going to start a nonprofit, which is the one that I'm currently the artistic director of, Pivotal Productions. And so that was sort of birthed out of our own experiences of internships in the city, for various, arts organizations, right? When you're in college, and especially in a program like that, they want you to have quote unquote real world experience, right? So you can get a job, right? But like a lot of times what happens is that you end up being the person that goes and gets coffee or whatever. And right. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, like, I mean, I guess there is, but like, there needs to be, in exchange for that, there should be something it's like an apprenticeship, right? So you should be learning something about the industry, right? And so I don't think either one of us particularly had good experiences in the various places that we were in to interns for. So we decided that we would start Pivotal for, it would be it's a theater company that will create positions of power for students or like young adults that have just graduated, to be a choreographer, a lighting designer, a sound designer, a set designer, stage manager, right? And you would shadow, people that have worked in the field before, but really you're the one that's given the opportunity to do that. And so, I think that's important because that's the only way that these sorts of, I find that theater is like one of the only industries that continues to thrive because people like absolutely love to do it, right? Like there's not a lot of money to be made in it unless you're someone like Lin-Manuel Miranda, right? If like that's the goal, right? But like if it's that true passion that drives people in this industry, right? So to me, that passion is not stronger in anyone than people that are like literally just getting out of college, that are like hungry and want to, you know, take on the world. And so that energy is amazing to be around. And like Pivotal Productions ended up being the producing partner of Straightforward. So we had a lot of young people that had just graduated, mostly from Wagner and other places. So it was very full circle for us, to be on those, you know, and to have leadership positions. And so, but, you know, getting back to Billy, we've really, you know, I think grown as a creative pair, because when you're young, I think, you know, you think you know everything, and, you know, you get into these big arguments over stupid crap, and we've definitely had our fair share. But, you know, going through all of this together has been very strengthening for our relationship. I will say that, because because it has to be, because if it's not, then you have no shot in being successful. You know, I mean, the amount of money that we had to raise to do what we did last summer was probably the most challenging thing that we ever had to do. And so, you know, all of the petty bullshit needs to be put aside. The egos need to be put aside, because otherwise it's just not going to happen, you know? And so arguments that I can look back on that we had like in our early 20s would never happen today.
Wow.
You know, like we'll still get into arguments over creative decisions and things like that, but we're fine right after we have them. And I think that's just sort of an agreement that we've sort of come to, is that if this is going to work, we have to work this way.
I mean, it's not that dissimilar to a marriage. You're talking about a long, durable relationship. And I think what happens is that as the years pass, you're arguing, but you're laughing at yourselves as you're arguing. So there's a sense of amusement and bigger picture and humor about it. And yeah, you're passionate and heated. And then the tempest kind of moves on, and, you know, the rainstorm moves through, and then you're friends again, and you remember why you started this to begin with all those years ago. So it sounds really cool. I'm hoping you can tell us, you know, what, and as an audience member, even though, you know, you obviously the show's going to continue to evolve, what can an audience member expect to hear? Like the kind of music. And there's so many different types of musicals. Like, what kind of music can they expect to hear? Even if you don't give away plot points or details in general, like what kind of evening are they going to have? You know,
When I was writing the score for this, I was very much into, and have always been and will always be into, REM. I'm actually wearing my REM shirt for this
cool.
tonight. And when I went up to the you know, the retreat, when I played for you guys, I did an REM song, and I think their music in general is, it obviously, like, they're, in my opinion, they're like one of the like grandfather bands of like alternative indie music, college rock, like that. We wouldn't have that without them. And so that's just like a genre of music that I really love, have always loved. And I think I love it because of like the emotional arc that it sort of takes, just because there's no like rules about it, right? Like you can do sort of whatever you want within that genre. And I feel like REM was so good at that. And the other thing that they were good at was they were not afraid. They had a male singer who was not afraid to show emotion, which is something that
revolutionary,
especially during that time period of the 80s, late 80s, early 90s. You had a lot of these, like, you know, all these grunge acts that followed, like they all have a debt of gratitude to REM, because if you go back and listen to their records, it's like it's like grunge before grunge, but there's this like emotional arc to it, you know. And so, and being able to be a male frontman, and have that sort of emotional connection and vulnerability to the audience, and have it on such a mainstream scale, I think is so revolutionary, like you said. And so that was sort of the inspiration that I had for for this musical was like trying to find a way, because it's two men that are singing this entire score, but I also wanted it to have a feel of like this sort of like alternative indie style music, but also have that, sort of emotional thread throughout the whole thing. So I would say, that's a long-winded answer to say, like, it's like sort of like alternative indie, but with like a little bit of Broadway flair thrown in.
You've been listening to Not Going Quietly with co-hosts Jonathan Beal and Britt East.
Thanks so much for joining us on this wild ride as we explore ways to help everyone leap into life with a greater sense of clarity, passion, purpose, and joy.
Check out our show notes for links, additional information, and episodes located on your favorite podcast platform.